And Annabelle, if you can start recording, that would be wonderful. And I'll make a start. Okay, so hello everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for the first talk of our Ignite series. My name's Tom. I'm part of the recruitment and outreach team here at Norwich University of the Arts. And I'll shortly be handing over to Nick Rees, who will be running through his career in photography. Before I do, we have a few house rules to go through. So we'd be grateful if you could ensure that your audio and video remains muted throughout this session. Nick will be presenting for around 20 minutes. Following this, he'll answer your questions. If you do have any questions, please ping them to us via the chat. And we'll look to answer as many of those as possible. Apologies if we don't get around to your question, but we will be finishing at around 4 o'clock. We'll be recording today's session, so you don't need to worry. If you have any technical problems, we'll be making the recording available to you after the session. If Nick has any technical problems or his internet drops out, we'll try to reconnect for around 5 minutes before cancelling the session. Our apologies in advance if this happens, but we will make that recording available to you. If you see or hear anything inappropriate or have any questions or concerns about the workshop or your situation at home, don't hesitate to message me privately and I'll be on hand to assist with you throughout the presentation. So that is effectively it from me. I'm going to hand over now to Nick and I hope you enjoy the talk. Thank you, Nick.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tom. Hello, everybody. I'm assuming you're all there. I am just looking at a picture of myself, which is strange. It's easier doing this in a classroom, I think. But here we are. So first and foremost, I'm a photographer, and Tom has instructed me to talk about myself for half an hour, which I think on one hand is quite a difficult thing to do. So hopefully it will be interesting and informative rather than strange and peculiar. This is, as I just said, about my career and what I've done, and I think parts of it you may find that reflect on your life or what you'd like to do, but I think it potentially will be good just to find out about one person's little life, and there are so many different things you can do within photography and the creative arts that I think they can be applied sideways, and I'm going to try and mention some of these side avenues as we go along, rather than just steamrolling on in my kind of blinkered life. So that is my plan. And as Tom said, at the end, there'll be some time for some questions, and I'm very happy to try and answer anything you have going on that. So Tom, if we could advance from this slide to the next slide, please. So as I said, this is about my career, and what I've done with mine is I've become incredibly specialized and kind of very narrowed in what I do, which I think is interesting, but not many people will be able to copy me, mainly because I got here first and I'm going to try hard to continue doing what I'm doing. But in this world of photography, there are so many different things that you can photograph. You can, I mean, I've made a little list here for you, but this isn't exhaustive. This is the beginning of the list, and it kind of carries sort of the major parts of it. You've got sports photographers who will be covering events for magazines or for the actual sporting bodies themselves, for the teams, selling those into, as I said, magazines, onto television, into sporting rights. A huge number of things in there, exhaustive. We could talk about that for hours. Fashion photography is a ginormous thing. People need to photograph things continuously for the amount of demand there is there. There's an amazing amount of work to do in an amazing number of locations. Just a little side note, I think we have to try and ignore COVID for the time being, because my career is before that and then it is going to go away. So hopefully we can just sidestep that and just move on and think that it will be gone at some point. I'm not going to go through all of these, but as you can sort of see, there are lots of opportunities available within photography. And I'm going to really focus down on just this little area, but then you'll see later on, I'm going to mention a few of the areas I have worked in, even though I'm now specialized. And then just as a side note here, photography, as I said, is quite broad, and there are more things you can do than just take pictures. I mean, out of the entire photography community, most people don't take pictures. There are assistants, there are people who are doing production, getting things organized for the shoot. There are people who work in the creative industry beforehand, afterwards, post-production. There's all the equipment sales and rentals and studio works, and continues on that way. And they're all very important jobs, and they wouldn't be able to produce photography shoots without these people. And do ask about those if you'd like. If we can advance to the next slide, we can now talk about me, Tom, which is obviously the important bit. There's sort of the housekeeping at the beginning, saying that there are options and art is the bigger world. Here is, I'll just turn my notes. Tom, am I going too quickly or speaking in some kind of terrified way? Am I all right? I'm all right.
I think you're doing fine.
Yeah,
Carry on.
It's strange being alone here with you, Tom. And
Most people say that.
Out the inner worries. So this is one of my pictures from a long time ago. Rather than putting teenage me here looking excited, I thought that my work might be better. John Clark says good so far. Thank you. Marvelous. It is, at the time, I was very pleased with this picture. I mean, it wouldn't be my portfolio anymore, but I think this is very interesting. I mean, we could talk about this for hours, couldn't we? The reason for shooting banana, is there two or are there three bananas there? It is hard to tell. But I think, first and foremost, you should be proud of photography or any artwork you make, because you put a lot of work into it. So show people and see what it is. And even if it's a picture from a long time ago, hopefully for someone or something, it is worth looking at for a fraction of a second, but you'll be looking at it for longer, I'm afraid. So Tom tells me a lot of you will be at school or in a gap year or somehow looking to go to university, and maybe some of you are already at university or are older and want to go and start learning something. I mean, there are a million options, but first and foremost, I just thought I put down the fact that I did do GCSEs. I did that, I did A-levels. Most people do them. I haven't put down my scores on there. I did all right, not a complete genius, but I'm pretty happy with what I did. And I did a mixture of different things, which I think is quite important. If you want to work in an industry which is about creativity or about having an opinion, or it's about doing something differently, the broader your education, the better. It makes you a more interesting person. It gives you more resources to pull on. It gives you an ability to actually think in a different way to somebody else. If you, I mean, I studied biology, for instance, and this is a long time ago, and I'm not a biologist now, but I did do that. And I have an understanding of how plants work and how animals work, how they connect to each other, and the ecosystem which they belong to. And those kind of things, although it's not particularly primary in my life at the moment, do lead me to a certain number of decisions and a structure of thinking, potentially, similar to maybe some studying in law. These things are all important. And I think there's a broadness in education, which is quite useful. And I think also at university, you can also still be broad. You can look at things, but you don't have to do everything at school. You can learn and do learning and study things in everyday life. You could read an interesting book. You could watch a film about Ninja Turtles. It all adds to the spice of life and the breadth of an education. An education is fulfilling and broadening your mind. So that's what I want to touch on there. There's a reality to doing tests and taking it seriously and not going, I don't need to do maths because I'm going to be a photographer when I grow up, or I don't need to speak French because I'm really happy in somewhere in England speaking English and eating donuts. So whatever it is a breadth of knowledge. So I would say just do them and do them well, and they inform each other, okay? So that's probably end of that, and that sounds a bit boring to some extent, but hopefully it's reassuring. Excuse me. I also did, sorry, Tom, are we running out of time? Can we go back? Are we running out of time? I'll just quickly do the last 2 points on here. I think your time at school and your time before university, or your time before you leave home, if you don't go to university, is a great time to experiment with different things. You can look into these different ideas of which you like. Do I like photography? Do I not? Et cetera, et cetera. So I think just that's my last point on there, really. is that. And the work experience we will come back to in the work section later, if Tom wants to skip on. So sort of skipping on to how I approach photography, and I feel very lucky that I was able to early on in my life, when I was only 16, 17, really kind of clench on to the idea that I liked photography and I wanted to do something with it. It is amazingly lucky and incredibly rare to grab something that early on and push it through to where I am now. Most people would start a bit later, or they'd start one thing and lose interest in it and come up again. In the same way as if you are studying an instrument, you might be pushed into doing it at school, and then actually it's not really one you want to do a different one. And it kind of, you have this arc and flow of wanting to do more, not wanting to do it. So for me, I really enjoyed it. And I had time at school, and I was encouraged to experiment and do different things. And it grew into something bigger. And what I'd like to wrap up with that little bit would be to say, you need to find something you like and get on with it, really. And if you don't like it, you shouldn't really be doing it. Unless, of course, it's your broad education, at which point it's incredibly important. I wonder if we're good on time, Tom, but I'll rattle on regardless. I hadn't quite finished with school. Are we rattling on? Sorry. Can we go back? We'll go back. And just to go back, I don't know if people who are actually interested in photography or not more about the creative arts, but I'm going to plow on of my life. I got a camera early on and I played with it and I did different things. I did long exposures and short exposures. I did multiple exposures. I did stills, I did videos. I made stop motion animations. I made a little dark room in a shed. It didn't really work very well, but it was a great position to be in to have that time. And even if your interest is animation or it's in video design or in architecture, you have this time just to go and play with things, and you have this time to go and make mistakes, because it's a good time to make mistakes. Just checking my notes. I think we can move on. The bottom there, it says I enjoyed it, and I think that is hopefully the overarching feel of this, to give you the permission to enjoy what you do. And if you can enjoy it now, hopefully you'll be enjoying it when you're working. So, university. I went straight from university, straight from school to university, which was great for me. And I think Tom was telling me a little bit about what people do and their approaches to it. And there are many ways in. And when I was there are people in my class who were already 25, 28, and there are a couple on other courses who were in their mid-30s, and people approach university at different times and they go and study at different times. And didn't bother anybody when I was there. I can't see why it would. It's nice. You take an extra year in foundation, or you do a year 0. I went to university. I went because I decided I wanted to be a photographer. And I decided I liked art school. And I visited a lot of different universities, and I liked Norwich. I went to Norwich. And for me, it worked. There are many options. Have a little look at them. When I went and I jumped in with both feet. I decided that for me, it wasn't going to work by just doing a little bit here, a little bit there. I wanted to go for it and do something. So I went and I had a great time. I had time to experiment again, which I think is, maybe I've used this word too many times. It is a time to do things and see if they work. And you can do one project one week and then you can jump to the next project. And as long as you can show your lecturer why and how, then there's justified in your time. And if you learn something at the end of it, then that's kind of great. I've thrown a lot of my work away from university. I mean, not completely in the bin, but I'm not going to show it anymore. There are a couple of fine examples here of things that I did when I was at uni, and I kind of liked them, and I spent a long time doing them. And it has informed what I do now. I have done projects at university which had more people in. I've done projects which had architecture in, etc., etc., etc. But here are some kind of drinky things, because I do drinky things now. I thought they're kind of quite relevant. So for me, it worked really well. And there was a time to spend there, and there was more equipment than I had at home, by a lot, yeah. And there was more expertise there than I had at home, and it was really good. However, do you need to go to university to do a job in photography? And the answer is, I'm afraid, Tom, is no. Hope I won't get cut off now. It's not necessary to go to university, to spend the money doing that, to be there. You can do it another way. You could become a photographer after being a wrestling champion in Zimbabwe. Like, one thing doesn't lead to the other. It isn't informed of, and there's no award at the end to give you something. Yeah, it is. I mean, there are some courses which you can do that, and then you kind of get a job at the end, as long as you pass. If you pass medicine, you can go and get a job. Yeah, if you kill someone, then that's the end of your job. But you can go and do it. If you go and do accounting, you can get your qualification, and then you can go and get a job. I mean, there are more than one, and you can do better and do worse. But with photography, you can you do your course, and then you kind of got nothing. So, so you don't have to go. But on the next slide, Tom, I'm going to tell you what I found great about university and the reason why it helped me. And the reason it helped me, to a great part, was A, the time to experiment, but also here, number one, being around like-minded people, which actually is a great moment because you've been at school probably, or you've been in the workplace before, and now you're surrounded by people who are also interested in photography, or you have friends who are on other courses. I mean, you're allowed to talk to other people. You could talk to an animating student and go, hey, this is interesting. We're all doing something. What do you like? And it gives you a position to be talking and being surrounded by people who are similar to you and have similar interests. And it's the same if you do an engineering degree or you do a chemistry degree. You're suddenly surrounded by people who all have a similar goal, and that's quite special. Because I would imagine, unless you're at college where people are also kind of reasonably focused on creativity, at school you're not, to the greater part. So it's nice to be in that environment. One reason it's nice is because it pushes you further. It pushes you to be challenged. I use my phrase here, jumped in with both feet, which I've written down, just so I didn't forget it, because it's a great one. I jumped in, but I wanted to be really good. I wanted to do something well, but that pushed me because I wanted to compete with what other people are doing. We'd meet up at the end of the week and everyone would show their work, and you go, that's better than my shot. I want to do better than that. I want to be the guy who takes that shot. I don't want to be the one who settles for this shot. And it helps you improve because you are seeing what people who are your peers do, and you want to be doing better work than them or the same work, or you want to somehow compete. Not because you have to, but I wanted to. Yeah, it's not a gladiator moment. You're not looking for points and looking for blood, but you want to do best, and you know that you could do better, or you go, I hadn't thought of that, or yeah, you're right, it isn't that sharp. I did make a mistake, or I didn't print it properly, or yeah, I could have done this to improve it. And you need to build your selection of tools and your selection of ideas so that you can quickly morph these things in, because photography is a very impulsive thing, but you have to choose what you do impulsively, which is strange, but we can talk about that later at some point. And then this closes around to the third point here, which is presenting work. If you work professionally, you have to show people your pictures. It's quite important to be able to show people pictures if you're working commercially, because that's all people want from you. All they want to do is get you to take a picture for them. So it's nice to learn how to show people pictures and to ask someone's opinion, because if no one likes it, then kind of it's a bit self-obsessed and a little bit waste of time. But if you have to like it first and foremost, but then you have to show someone else, and if everyone hates it, then it's probably not a great picture, potentially. Yeah, hang on. Thank you. So when I was in university, called them critiques, and everyone would have the chance to give their opinion on a picture. It's not about your teacher telling you it's good or not, because it's a subjective thing. It doesn't matter if they like it or not. It matters what everyone thinks. And if they can find beauty in it, or they can find a decent point about it and something to improve it, you can move forward, because you are trying to take better pictures at the university. You are a student, after all. That is the point. So that was a great part of it. And you wouldn't get that if you just showed your mum all the time. Because you just get a pat on the back, or alternatively, you could get a lot of flack. I mean, I don't know. It depends on a lot of subjects there, but it leads you to be critical of yourself. And I think being critical of yourself is very important. It doesn't lead to self-doubt. It leads to being assured and knowing that you can do something and you've got this history and this body of work, which is good, and you are moving forward, and you can push that onto any part of your life or any aspect of your life of being critical of it. Did I do well? Am I pleased with myself? What would I do differently next time? And I think if you can kind of master that at the ages of 18, 19, or even before, then I think you're going to do very well. Because this is, after all, a job you'll be doing where you have to be self-assured, because you are the one person who is in charge of your career. You're not part of a big company. You're going to be part of so-and-so LTD, or however you want to call it. So you need to be critical of yourself so that you can improve and you can be sure. Last
Nick,
point. I'm going to rush off. No, go. Sorry,
just to give you a bit of a time check. We've got, in theory, we've got 10 minutes left. But if you could kind of tell us more of your story, and then we'll, for the Q&A time, if people have questions they want answered, then maybe we'll extend things a little bit beyond.
We're just going to jump into work. So I think if we just plow on, and we
yes, sounds great.
We can pause for a few questions after half of it, and then we can come back again if you like, or however you want to play it. Don't really mind. I'm sorry for waffling. So the last point here was just saying I was lucky enough to enter an awards in my third year at university, and I got a picture in, and that's great. And it made me feel really happy, because who doesn't like a pat on the back from someone you haven't met? So anyway, it was a great moment of validation, knowing that I was kind of doing well. And that jumped into, Tom, if you skip forward, it jumped into working. And after university, there's this crushing reality of having to earn some money properly. I mean, however you do earn money or live at university, there is a moment when you have to leave. So first of all, you need to get your foot in the door. And this is a bit of a minefield. Yeah. First and foremost, if you are looking for jobs and you've got no experience, it's going to be very difficult. You need to show someone that you're going to be worthwhile being there. So I think one of the points on here is work experience. I would recommend at some point you do some work experience with someone in some form in the creative world, just so you get a little taste of it. I think it will help you reassure yourself that you want to do it. Because if you did 3 years at university and then hadn't done any of that, then you're not really seeing the full picture. Also, it's fantastic to see on a CV. If someone wants to work for me, I want to see a CV. I want to see that you can write that and you're an interesting person. I just need to see that you've done a few things, because a photo shoot is a very busy time. There's not moments for me to be a pastoral leader for you on the first half an hour of the day, because I've got a lot of things I've got to do. So I need to see that you've done something. So if you haven't done work experience or work for someone else, or you haven't been an au pair, or you haven't gone and done a year abroad, or you haven't gone and worked in a factory, then these things kind of speak to that you're not quite ready to jump into the deep end of a photo shoot, potentially. But there are many chances for you to do something, and however small that is, it gives you an idea, and it gives me an idea that you are trying hard. And I need someone who's trying hard on my day, because we're going to be really busy. And there's not going to be a lot of time for teaching and doing these kind of things. So I think I said a few things there. If you're trying to improve a CV, you could add years abroad, or even sporting clubs. If you were in a sporting club and you were the captain of the hockey team, or you were the goalie or something, it just shows me a little bit, ooh, that's interesting. I talked to them about that at lunchtime, or I just don't want to know that you watch TV all the time, or something. But if you can find it, a bit of work experience, just say I did half a day here. I went to that advertising agency and I made some tea. And I just go, oh, you've seen something different. You've seen something and you know about how things work. And there are loads of things. On the next slide, there are a couple of ideas of different places to work. So I moved to London and I started working as an assistant, okay? So if you go to the next, actually I'll just tell you what an assistant is, Tom, first, because some people won't know, and then we'll move on. So primarily, one of the jobs you can do in photography, which isn't the photographer, is an assistant. And I worked for about 8 or 9 years as an assistant, which was really good fun. And it was a broad number of things. And I use assistants on all of my shoots. I have 2 or 3. When I was on big fashion shoots, you might have 4 or 5 assistants. And photographic assistants are there to support the photographer in whatever they want to do. If If a different department want an assistant, they should go and get one. If the stylist needs someone to iron clothes or go and do some couriering, they need their own assistant. If the makeup artist wants help doing makeup, they get their own assistant. You're there as the photographer's assistant, and you're going to do everything they need to make the day run smoothly. Because there's not a lot of time on a day, because we are a big circus which arrives for 1 day or 2 days or 7 or 8 days, depending on the job. And there are a number of things that have to happen that day, because there's only one model that day, and the next day there are 2 models, or the clothes have to go back to India, or whatever it is, has to happen that day. So one person can't do it themselves, therefore they have a team, and they have a team of assistants. You could do anything from making tea to taking over the shoot if the photographer is incapacitated. There are so many things in between that, and there are different kind of levels of assisting. And I have a kind of junior member, and I have 1 or 2 really senior members on my team normally, who I could rely on just to do things. If I need to go to a client meeting for something else, I can say, can you do A, B, C, and D? And I come back, and the set's changed, and we're ready to move on. So it's not a junior position, but there are junior positions within it. So I don't want anyone to think that an assistant doesn't know what they're doing, or isn't a useful member of a team, or isn't paid well. They are there to do a very important job, and without them, nothing could happen. So Tom, next slide, please. Here we are. So this is a little video I made in the Bahamas once on a shoot. And as you can see, it can be a lot of fun. This is going from one shoot location to the next. We shot on a beach, and then we had to go to the big house over the bay and shoot someone by a pool to sell a dress to someone else. This is one little snapshot of one shoot. There are good days and there are bad days. This is quite a good day. After a year or so of working as an assistant, I kind of made it. It was kind of going well. I had a number of clients who would book me. I would have 2 or 3 days off a week, or I'd be fully booked all 5 days, or I might shoot the weekend or have 2 or 3 days off. But my calendar was full. My bank account wasn't empty. It was kind of going all right. And it's that kind of moment when you feel like it's kind of all right, and you can make a living out of it, and you can do well, and you're not on the edge. And that's a great feeling. And I put down here, it can be tricky. It's a bit like going from school to the next school. That kind of feeling in the middle, that first 6 months, is always a bit, oh, I don't know where I am. Where's chemistry? Where's this? And then you go to uni, and then suddenly it's all different again. You've got to make new friends. You've got to work out where to go and buy bread from. No one's going to buy you your mayonnaise for you. And then you have to go to work, and it's all different again. And when you're in these different spheres of your life, you rise to the top of them. You become the oldest at school, and life becomes kind of easier on a number of levels, because you know all the teachers, you know all the friends. All the little ones are kind of there, and they're not really part of your life because you're doing really exciting things. And it kind of felt the same way with work a lot of the time. When you start a new job, or when you go into a new area, you can feel quite small, but it's reflecting on those past experiences going forward. And with, with photography, often you're doing this day in, day out, and you're going into different spheres, working in different teams. And that can be really challenging until you get into this kind of, oh, it's okay, I have to learn everyone's name at the beginning of the day, and I'm probably going to forget it halfway through, but I've got a call sheet so I can try and look at it. And you're moving on, and you're meeting new people, and after a while you feel like you're one of the bigger boys or bigger girls, and you're going to know people, and you've got reassurance in that. So after a year, I knew how most things worked. I'd gained a wealth of experience, and I was getting regular work. And I started freelancing, and that means, as I said, going from job to job, not having a full-time job, not having anyone actually looking after you. You're paying your own taxes. You're looking after yourself. If you take a sick day, then no one's going to pay you. It's a challenging thing to do, but it can work. Hundreds of people make it work all the time, and it's a good life. And here are a few little, just a cross-section of what I've done. But I think if we jump to the next slide, I will chat through, please.
Just to jump in just for a moment, I respect it's 4 o'clock now. We did say originally we were thinking about wrapping up at 4. We'll keep on going though with Nick's talk, and if you do need to leave us now, that's absolutely fine. You will be receiving a recording of this talk as well, so you might want to catch up with it a little bit later. So thank you for coming. If you do need to escape, then no problem. But we will carry on, Nick, and then we'll look to answer a few questions at the end as well.
Okay, thank you. So first and foremost, every day is different when freelancing. Here's a couple of pictures of me not working. The obviously when I am working, there's no moment to taking a picture. So here's me hanging around in different parts. So as was on the last slide, you may have read already, I have worked on food shoots, shoot portraits, worked on film productions, done fashion shoots, worked in sports, worked in advertising for banks and selling watches and diamonds and dishwashers and coffee machines. And every day was different, and it was all really quite fun. And you didn't have the responsibility as a photographer, but you were there part of the team, and you were a valued member of the team. And there I saw an awful lot of different things, and these are some parts of the world I visited. If we jump to the next one, Tom, I have outlined a couple of just examples of things I shot. So here is me moving equipment through Marrakesh on the back of a sort of enlarged tuk-tuk style motorcycle. We again, sort of busy day, load it in, go to the next location, shoot some more pictures. So real world examples. If you buy a tin of tomato Heinz soup, I shot the tomato on that. I wasn't a photographer, I was working as an assistant, and I worked on that, did that, and you go and do that. And with the same photographer, we shot Uncle Ben's rice. So every bowl of rice on the front of Uncle Ben's packets, I've somehow kind of poked it or touched it or maybe eaten it, and been there and done that. Worked corporate headshots for banks in London. Always fun to go to the City of London. Never went anywhere to park, but you often go in the underground car parks into sub-basement 7 to park and collect the kit, and then go through 900 different locked doors to get to office sort of number 5 and then take a picture. It's, you see a little bit of different, you see life in a different perspective. I did a shoot in Selfridges once before they opened, and you have to go to the building, which is on a different street, and you go in there and get a security pass, and then you go down 2 escalators and go along underneath the road, and then you come out and someone checks your bag, and then suddenly you're in Selfridges, and you go, oh, this is quite fun. But then you have to go back out because they've got your shoes or something. And you just see the world from a different point of view, and it's quite interesting. Next one, shoot for Vogue in the Caribbean. Kind of maybe on some people's kind of list of fun things to do. I'd recommend it. It's good. You are required to wake up with darkness so that you can go and shoot sunrise every day. And if you don't want to get up early, then you're going to be disappointed by the 4 a.m. wake up call, the howling monkeys, and no breakfast until after sunrise. It's going to be, not every day is sort of a holiday, but every day can be fun. What else is on there? Clothing campaign in Mexico, very similar kind of deal. You are flying in, taking the pictures, flying out again. Sometimes I stayed an extra day and had a bit of a holiday afterwards, but you don't see a lot of the world when you're actually on the shoot because you're going from A to B. I shot a portrait of David Attenborough once. That was quite a cool moment a couple of years ago. And I've worked on shoots for A-list Hollywood actresses and boy bands and all those kind of things I can't, I'm afraid, remember the name of because I'm not really part of that world. But I think I've seen a few people, if you like that. It's very boring at the time because you are being professional and it's there, but it is, again, seeing a fraction of someone else's life and seeing how they present themselves can be quite interesting. And the last one on here, Tom, is just a portrait of a tiger for an advert. We did a bit of that work. Shot a polar bear as well, again, a similar kind of thing, which was kind of interesting, a different day. Do we want to stop and go to questions, or are we going to just plow on, Tom? What would you like to do? We'll plow on, there's 2 left on there.
Yeah, I mean, if you're able to kind of just maybe go through these a little bit more quickly, Nick, that'd be great.
I'm sorry, Tom. So okay. The last couple here is just, if you want to do something after assisting, you probably be a photographer or a director. I know a lot of people who are full-time assistants and they might do that for the rest of their careers. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing, you don't need to move on. You can make good money being an assistant. It can be a good place to be. But I decided I wanted to be a photographer, and I left university with a bunch of pictures, and I needed some more. I needed to compete with the best guys in the industry, and I needed to try and pinch their work. So what I did is I shot some more pictures, and I shot a whole bunch of pictures, hundreds of them, because not every one of them makes into the folio. And here's a quick snap of one of my old houses, and just I filled it full of stuff because In the early days, I couldn't afford to shoot in studios, so I would hire stuff and bring it home, and I would take some pictures. And I think that's the reality of, are you going to work hard? Do you really want this? So here's just a very quick snapshot of what I did in one situation to take a picture of a glass of whiskey, I think, or something like that. So that really was whizzing through Tom, but here he is. It is building a portfolio is a big thing and an incredibly important thing, because you need to show people that you can take pictures and what kind of pictures you want to take as well, because this is your moment to choose. One last slide on here, Tom, and I'll whiz through that for you. Here's a sort of set build we did for a little film I made. This is just linking back to the idea of being at university, and you are taking pictures and showing pictures and talking about pictures. And that is fundamentally what I do all day. So you need to get your head around doing that and being happy with that, because it can be quite scary. So there was building a portfolio, and then I showed lots of people, and I showed people, asked their opinion, and I showed people and tried to get them to buy pictures. And that is fundamentally what I do when I don't shoot, is try and get people to look at my work. And I think a lot of people do that, trying to be different, trying to make beautiful imagery and show someone who hasn't seen it before who might like it. And that is the key to getting a job in the end, is showing pretty pictures, I guess, really. And then there's one last picture of me working Tom at the end there, which is saying, after all that, after however many years assisting and building the portfolio and going to university and thinking about it and dreaming about it, I now do shoot pictures. And here I am pouring some milk into some coffee, I think. And that is, in a nutshell, what I do. And that's 37 minutes, so that's 17 minutes too long.
That was great, mate. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. So what we're going to do now, Nick, we're just going to have a few moments to kind of go through some of the questions. There's been some great questions pouring in on the chat. So we'll look to answer those for a few more minutes. We'll try to wrap things up before 4:30. So we'll kind of bear that time frame in mind. Sure. But for the moment, yeah, please send in your questions over the chat. That would be wonderful. And I'm going to forward some of them onto, or I'm going to ask you some of them, Nick, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay, so would you recommend any book for wildlife photography?
I don't know, I'm afraid. If you buy Tim Flack's book, More Than Human, my name is in the back of it. So I'd recommend that one. I helped him do it. He's not really a wildlife photographer, but an animal photographer. If you haven't seen him before, his name's Tim Flack, F-L-A-C-H. And he doesn't shoot animals well, he does sometimes, but mainly he shoots them in the studio. And he has an artistic way of doing it. And I think that's very interesting. It's probably not what you mean, but it could be a different avenue to look down. Otherwise, I'm not really sure, particularly about animal photography, but personally, I always find the end of the BBC series, they do a little snapshot of how they filmed it, and I always find that really interesting. As a bit of behind the scenes and how long it takes. And don't be fooled by the idea that you can take 100 shots in a year, because these guys spend hours and hours and hours sitting in a cold cabin waiting for a tiger. So a lot of planning is involved in these things.
Great, thank you, mate. Tim Flack's also made a book called Dogs. It was a best-selling book in America, so that's a great one as well.
Good work on that one. Not so interesting for our amazing viewers, obviously.
Yeah, okay. Can you explain why you had enjoyed your experiences? What was it that you got out of key experiences, Nick?
I don't know. What did I enjoy about it?
Yeah. I mean, that's quite broad, so you might need to pinpoint one or two experiences.
I wrote it down in one of my notes, thinking why I enjoyed it is there's a feeling of being on set, and there's this, for me, it's kind of, it's not an adrenaline rush, because that would be kind of going a bit far, really, but it's quite exciting. If you're on a film set or any kind of production, it's got a time frame, and you are there to do something by the end of it, and everyone knows that come 6 o'clock, that's kind of where you're meant to finish. And sometimes you've got to go the extra mile. And I've been on jobs that finish at 2 in the morning. You know, you have problems and you solve them and you get there. And it's kind of quite exciting being on this. I think it's similar to working in a kitchen, maybe. There's 4 or 5 chefs in a row. One's in charge of this, one's in charge of that, and there's a head chef at the end. And you've got 20 minutes to make the meal for client A who's sitting in the restaurant waiting, and you got to go dum, 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 dum. And then suddenly you go, it's not good enough, just throw it in the bin and start again. And there's that moment you go, oh, I've got to get it out, but you've got to do a good job. And it's this mixture of speed and efficiency and beauty. And no one wants a bad meal in the restaurant, and no one wants a dodgy picture. So that's one reason why it's quite exciting on a broad sense.
We're going to have to leave it at that one. That was a great answer, though, because we've got loads of more questions. Okay, so quick one. What camera do you think is best to work with from your experience?
Just whatever one, really. It doesn't really matter, which sounds a bit boring, but cameras are really expensive, and you just kind of need an all right one, I reckon. Depending on what you want to shoot. If you want to shoot really high speed stuff, then you need some kit, or if you need to shoot this or that, but you can kind of make do. And a lot of my pictures were shot with not the best kit in the world, because I didn't have it at the time. And I think especially when you're learning, you have to work out what you've got and how you're going to use what you've got to make it. Otherwise, all you end up doing is spending your time looking at equipment online, and it's a bit kind of, which just doesn't really lead anywhere. And it is incredibly expensive. I shoot with Canon quite a lot of the time. They've got the new one, I've got an R5, and that is got a decent megapixel count. You've got a great ISO on it, so you can shoot the duck. But I often put it on the back of a large format technical camera so that I can do shots which have different focuses and et cetera, on that. So I kind of got a hybrid camera. But a lot of people I've shot with shoot on Canons or Nikons, very happy with those. And a lot of them also shoot with Hasselblads and Phase 1 kit and the new Fuji, but they're all going to cost 50 grand. So like, it doesn't really matter. And I think you just need to control what you have. And if you have some flash kit, if you want to do some lighting, or you have continuous light, or you want to just use a window but black out the other window, it's about kind of use what you got. And a lot of photographers have made a lot of money out of shooting with really bad cameras. So it's not about the kit.
I'm going to stop you there. That's a great point to finish on. What helps you think of your ideas for your images?
Fundamentally taking one and then working out what to change and do the next one. I think
so kind of molding them, modeling them as you go.
Yeah, and moving on as well. A lot of, I mean, look at the work of artists through their careers, they kind of tend to have one style, and then they kind of play one thing and then move on, and then they come back to the first thing and they do it in a different way and then move on. So I'd say shoot to find, take some pictures and then work out why you like them and then kind of go along. And I think my ideas come kind of quite slowly, and I don't often sit down and kind of go, I want an idea now. Because when I try and do that, they kind of become quite static. So if you're thinking about it and moving along and shooting something at the same time, as long as you're shooting something, you'll know that you don't like it or you do like it and you want to do more of that or less of that. So I think just shoot something and then you'll help you develop more ideas as you go down the line on that one.
So next one, you've kind of answered this question before in the talk, but if you could summarize it in a couple of like points. So what were the opportunities that university opened up for you?
I think I said this at the beginning, I don't think it's a magic ticket. I don't think it gives you an opportunity. I think potentially if you want to go and study law at Harvard, you can probably get a job because of that. I mean, I'm just making it up for it as an example. So I don't think it's given me an opportunity, but what it did, it gave me the time and the resources to learn something and then apply that knowledge to a career. So I don't think, I don't know if that really answers it, Tom, but I think there isn't, you do a degree, you get a job. That isn't what photography is. But by spending 3 years or 4 years, if you're doing the year zero or a foundation before that in a different college, it gives you time to work out what you want to shoot and start shooting it, or what you want to make and start making it if it isn't photography. So I think that's what it gives you. It gives you some time. And I mean, who's got time? If you've got a job 9 till 5, 9 till 7 every day, you don't have the time to go and make art or make photography or however you want to call it. So what it fundamentally gives you time, resources, and people who want to talk about it, which I think is probably what you need. So if you've got that differently and separately from university, then you can probably do it separately, but it works quite well.
Cool. All right, we've got a few, well, quite a few more. So I'll try to get through them quickly, Nick. So we'll try to do 30-second answers.
We've got 15 minutes now on your new time, so we're kind of all right.
Well, we've got a lot of questions. let's see how we go. Okay, so what would you say to the audience about the creative pictures you've taken? That's an interesting question.
Well, I like the idea that they are creative. That's nice. I don't know really. I don't know how to sum my work in half a minute. I've taken a lot of commercial pictures. I've taken a lot of pictures which are for a reason, or some of them are pretending for a reason, because they're not all commissioned. Some of them are from my time I showed you, which was making a folio. So hopefully some of those you won't be able to tell the difference of. And then there are also some which are, Tom, if you just jump to the next slide on our deck, there are some pictures. There are some more sort of creative ones, which I call them, which are kind of experiments, and they are just sort of splashes, and they're moving, and they are studies of light. And I would hope they are interesting. A lot of photography is of people or emotions, and they often need explaining about what they are or what they're doing, but very good ones do not need explaining. If you see an amazing photograph of a person, you hopefully will be able to tell what they're feeling and why, if you look at a photojournalism picture. But if you look at some of my pictures, which are the abstract ones, I hope they question you about what it is and why it's there, because I spent an awful lot of time making it look like it looks for a reason. And that's sort of the idea of art, isn't it, to a certain extent, is that you're asking people to take the time to look. So, I mean, there's a picture here of a cup in the middle with some very colourful bits on it, next to the whiskey on the left in the plane. And this is a plastic cup, which has just been lit from light from behind, but it's a polarized light. And then I've had a polarizer on the lens, and that allows you to see the spectrum of colors within all the stress points in the plastic. And to me, I think it really sums up waste, and it sums up my work as a drinks photographer, and it sums up kind of the technicality of it, and then this frozen moment where you can grab it, but it's really hard to grab. And it to me speaks of a lot of things in those areas, and I could waffle on, but I've only got 12 seconds left or something. I've probably gone over. So I hope someone would spend some time looking at something and go, I wonder why they did this, because they're clearly not a complete moron. So why are they asking me to spend this much time looking at this much thing? I think.
Thank you for that, mate. So we've had another question from a student that's thinking about going into teaching, and they've asked a really interesting question. What do you think are good starting points for teaching fundamentals in photography to people?
I think probably a good starting point is to look at, I mean, it's hard when you've got a bigger group, but if you're just doing 2 or 3, which is what I'm imagining to a certain extent, or a small group, start by looking at some pictures that they've made. If they come into a class, and they've probably already done 1 or 2 pictures, and they're probably quite proud of it. And I think it's nice to talk about what they've done and how and why and how they improve it. And this is what we're talking about at the beginning, when we were a university slide up on the deck, about a critique. If you're going to be spending time learning about photography, you've probably done some already, and you should show people and go, I want to go better. That's what they're asking. I'm assuming they want teaching. What are these like? How do I improve them? And it's difficult giving a critique about being mean, and you need to make sure that you are doing a compliment sandwich, or however you describe to do that. But I think that's the first step, is to look at it, and then everyone else can see, and then that starts a discussion, because I think that's probably more important than talking about f-stops and shutter speeds and what kind of film to put in the camera. And you can get so technical, but if it's kind of good already, then you need to work out why, and if it needs improvement, etc., etc. And there's more to it than what you're teaching one lesson. So why don't you just do it with pictures? Maybe that helped, I don't know. But
thank you for that.
Yeah,
that's great. So the next question is, how have you been required to adapt your practice and maintain your clients during lockdown?
I don't know, really. It's been tough. It's been tough because people are shooting less, because it's dangerous, isn't it? I mean, people don't want to be on set. I mean, the biggest thing is that I'm on a lot more Zoom conversations, talking basically to myself in this kind of manner, with clients who can't be there because of it. On commercial jobs, often in the past, before COVID, you may have had 10, 20 people on set just to shoot one little thing, which might sound a bit weird, but you do. And everyone there, and they've got an opinion, and they've got a stake in it. They've been working on this picture beforehand, and they need to make sure it's good. And you need to reassure them of that. And they're pretty reassured because they've booked you to shoot the picture. But as I said at the beginning, if this big circus arises and you've got 1 day to shoot it, so everyone has to be helped along the journey of shooting it. So the biggest change has been talking to people or them not being in the room, and trying to lead them on the journey with you. Because normally in a room, it's kind of easy and they get the vibe and they see and they look at the picture and they're happy, and you give them cups of nice coffee and a beautiful lunch and they feel like it's a professional thing. But when all they're doing is looking at you next to a kind of polyboard and a this and a that and someone walking around in the background, they don't get the same feeling of kind of control and intelligence in the same way, I don't think. So that's the biggest shift, is trying to describe things more and talking more and trying not to repeat yourself continuously, because I think that's also a bit dull. That's the biggest difference.
Thank you. Right, so another quick one. Where would be the best place to sell prints, in your opinion?
A gallery in Mayfair, probably. I don't know, I'm afraid. I think the best place would be a small gallery and not to ask too much money for them. I think probably you need to put yourself in the shoes of the person going to buy it. Are they going to buy a picture of a dog for 400 quid? Probably not. Yeah, it depends on what you're selling and where you're doing it. But if you are selling pictures of dogs, don't sell them in a seaside resort, because people who go there probably want to buy a picture of the seaside, for instance. I don't know. It's about the market and where you're going. It's a tough market selling prints. I think there are places online, but I don't know. I'm afraid I don't sell prints at the moment. I'd love to, but I'm not sure quite. I haven't got the body of work I want to go to that area yet. And I think hopefully at some point I will. But at the minute I don't. But it's a tough business.
Appreciate your honesty on that one. So we've got quite a few more. Sorry about this, mate. This is great though. Thank you for all your questions.
Quick fire.
So how do you establish the difference between photography being a passion and a hobby versus a career? And then there's a sub question with that. Do you separate photography that doesn't involve your work?
I don't understand the second one. So can we come back to that second?
Yeah.
Sorry, can you tell me the first one again, Tom? I'm just getting multiple.
Sorry. So how do you establish the difference between photography being a passion and hobby versus a career?
It's kind of the same thing to me. I mean, it might sound a bit weird. There's a difference between, you just have to be professional when you're doing it for someone else, and you have to get it right, and you have to do it on time and to budget, and there's a bit more pressure. But I don't know. I saw a quick question pop up whilst you're reading it at the same time, which seemed to link, and it said, do you still shoot for fun? And I do. I shoot for fun. I shoot a couple of pictures of my kids occasionally, which I'd love to do more of, but don't get around to. I shoot for fun because I'm experimenting, I'm still testing, I'm trying to do something which is different. I shoot pictures which I find visually pleasing and have got ideas which I like as well, because on this screen here, this bubble in the bottom corner is a nice example of that. I wasn't asked to shoot that, but I found it interesting and I wanted to capture something of a soap bubble, but I wanted to do it in my way and I wanted to choose how it looked, and I wanted to create something which I thought was beautiful. And that was part of my passion, and that's why I was doing it. I was doing it for me, but I'm also doing it because commercially I can show people this picture. And hopefully that's going to give an art director somewhere an idea going, oh, I saw this picture, which I thought was actually a really good example of this particular thing that I want to shoot. And my client needs to have some swirling color because they've got a new LCD TV and they need to show how colorful it is, or they want to show people that there's new life in this thing and they want to have that, or it's all about water and we need to throw some water around and do this. So I'm hoping that I can do more and more of those things where you get more time to experiment and do that. But at the same time, I like taking pictures of whiskey and that kind of thing. It's very interesting. Once you go down a rabbit hole of different things, there's an amazing number of things which come out of it. I don't particularly like cars, but if you love cars, you could become a car photographer. And every year there are new cars out and it's super exciting. And you go and photograph this and that, and there's a new steering wheel on the Model 5. But if you spend another couple of quid, you get the one with leather. And down any avenue, there is a huge breadth of possibilities. Or if you like biology, suddenly you can discover a new mouse, and that's incredibly exciting. So if you actually like something, then you can find joy in it. So actually, to a certain extent, I like my job and it is my passion. And that probably
Let's leave it at that. You've had a few questions asking you about if you can help out with some critiques and things at schools, but what we'll do is we'll look to put you in touch afterwards over email. So if you'd like to email us with those types of requests, that's at student.recruitment@nua.ac.uk, and we'll look to liaise between Nick and yourself on those types of questions. I know you addressed this in the talk, but how long have you been doing photography for?
I graduated in 2011, I think. Is that right, Tom? I think that's
Yes,
right.
it is.
Okay. So I've been doing it for 10 years, I think. That makes sense. Sorry, it sounds a bit stupid, I don't know. 10. I'm on to year 11 in my accounting. So yeah, 10 years. I've been doing that for. So, and there's not been much of a break, really. There's been only quiet weeks, quiet months, but there's been a pandemic. But that's what I've been focusing on for a decade. So yeah, that feels quite good.
Cool. Thank you, Nick. What does it take, if you were to summarize it in a few points? We're going to have to wrap things up shortly. What does it take to be a good photographer?
Oh, I don't know. It probably needs a massive ego, I imagine. That's probably, I haven't met a photographer who hasn't got one. It hopefully some of them are humble enough to actually talk to other people about it. To make it as a photographer, there's no, I don't think that's the key thing. I think this is what you and I were talking about earlier, Tom, about how if you want to do something different and you want to be respected for your own craft and your own vision. I mean, it sounds very grand to say that, to say my own artistic vision, but I have one. I have things I like. If someone asked me to take a picture of a glass of water on a table, I'm going to want to put it somewhere and I want to do something with it. So I think it needs an opinion. And I think you need to practice to make sure that what your opinion is actually beautiful, or at least kind of visually pleasing in some way. So, excuse me, which you can learn visual art from many different avenues, and looking at it is probably a good start, and working out why you like something. But if you want to be a photographer of anything, if it's sports or this or that, or be a cameraman for anything, then you need to have an idea of why and how you do something, which comes down to practicing a little bit and starting to shoot. And then from there, you need to build on what you like and what you don't like, and then move on a little bit.
Nick, I'm going to put to one more question, and I'm really sorry, everyone, for you put to us some great questions.
Yeah,
and if you do want Nick to answer those questions, I know some of them have kind of been answered through the answers that you've given already. But if people would like to get those answered, please email them to us. That's at student.recruitment@nua.ac.uk. And what we'll do is, for those that you really want answered, we'll put those to Nick to answer a little bit later. My final one, though, is how do you get a foot in the door, Nick? Like, how do you get on that workplace ladder? Like, how do you do that? Like, how does that work?
There's no magic way, I think, as I've been trying to sort of say a long time. I think it is a matter of, yeah, you need to go and talk to people, and you need to work out why them and how. And at the moment, it's really going to be difficult because no one's going to want anyone on set who doesn't need to be there because of the COVID. So it's probably going to have to be after that, probably after the summer. And if you're at school, I imagine there's probably some kind of way of dealing with the fact that you're not 18 yet, and probably don't go and ask to go and do a Victoria's Secret shoot, because that's probably not going to happen. But you need to approach someone and say, hey, this is who I am, and this is what I've done, and I'd like to come and do something. And you need to be nice about it. But just, I mean, if someone's got their email address on the website, then you can just ping them an email. And I think that's probably a good way of starting. You could approach companies. I mean, the BBC would probably have interns or summer projects you could go and be part of. If you've done one of those, then suddenly you look so much more attractive as a potential person on a shoot. You could work for an advertising agency. You could do an internship, yeah. Or you could. I when there's a photographer on my high street when I was growing up, and I talked to him a few times. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a day's work. You can go and see, go away. I worked for a couple of days doing work experience when I was at school with a photographer who was a friend of my grandfather or something, and there was this kind of tangible connection. But someone asked for me, and there was a connection, which is always the way, is a connection. If someone I know needs a favor, then it's much easier just to kind of go, all right then, because they're vouched for. So they've got a door in already, haven't they? They've got a foot in the door because someone vouched for them. But there's no reason why you can do it for nothing. I mean, if you don't know anyone, then just ask. Or you can go and work on a feature film and do that for a day or something. You can go and have a look and just say, hey, I don't know anything, but can I follow the prop guy around for a day and just learn something? And I'll be really kind and I'll bring my own lunch, and they'll go, oh, fine, you can have the lunch. And I think that's probably the beginning of getting a foot in the door, and it allows you to check that you like it. Because if you go and have a horrible experience, it might not be for you. Or it might just be that you've gone and met people who are horrible, which, I mean, could happen. I haven't met anyone horrible particularly, I don't think. Not horrible enough to not want to do it, but that's probably the best way, is just doing something, half a day here, or meeting someone for a chat. It hasn't got to be actually work. You could just go and say, hey, can I come and have a coffee with you? And I'm really interested, and here are some questions to show that you're interested. But if you want some time from someone, you kind of need to prove a little bit that you're worth the time. If that sounds, I mean, it sounds a bit awful, Tom. I don't know how to say that nicer. But I worked for a photographer once for almost full time, and he used to get kind of an email a day, or 2 or 3 sometimes. And we didn't answer all of them because it was kind of impossible to, and we're all busy already. So don't be put off by being ignored, but do just say a month later, hey, I sent you an email and I'm still really interested in finding out more. Or in that time, I mean, when assistants occasionally email me, they might give me an update saying, oh, since then I've worked on this, this, and this, or I've gone and done that, or actually I've recovered from a broken arm and now I can work again. And it's just a little update. And that's probably the best way in. And you just need to do 1 or 2 things, and then you can bung it on the CV and you look like you're really professional.
Nick, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for going over time. I'm sorry for kind of pushing it a little bit, but I'm really glad that you were able to kind of unpackage things that little bit further. So thank you so much. Right, I'm just going to bring things to a close, but before we finish today, I just want to remind you of the many more talks that we have across the Ignite series that you might want to get involved in. They cover all sorts of different subjects, from people that have worked in TV, animation, sculpture, fashion, textiles, and also we're doing a panel next week, which is with the most Eastern and Western and largest creative specialist universities. That's NUA, Falmouth, and the UAL. We're doing a talk next week about those really important questions when it comes to choosing a university course. So please join us for that. We also, yes, Annabelle's going to be popping the link to the Ignite series in the chat. So if you want to book your place onto any of the additional talks that we've got coming up from industry members, then please just click on the link that she's popping into the chat now. Thank you, Annabelle. To get an idea of the range of creative careers you can go into following graduation from each of our subjects, please have a look at our Your Creative Future booklet. We're also putting that onto the chat now. Thank you again, Annabelle. That's brilliant. And then we've got also, if you found this information useful, please share our other opportunities with your teachers and lecturers. We have a full range of all sorts of activities, including portfolio advice, Q&As with current students, discussions on creative career paths, creative workshops. Basically, we're going to share that link with you now. And if you could pass that on to your teachers, it would be great to work with you on some other projects. If you have any questions for Nick or any questions for us around our photography course, then please email us at student.recruitment@nua.ac.uk. Sorry, I haven't been able to answer some of those questions that you've been putting to us on the chat, but please ping them over to us over that email address, and we'll look to get those questions answered. Also, I want to flag up our Beyond the Frame competition. This is our photography competition. It's an international photography competition that we're running. The theme this year is community, and we're looking for you to respond to that creatively through photography. So please have a little look at the details. The deadline for that's coming up in June, so there's a little bit of a lead time to that. And you can find out more about the prizes and the judges on the link that Annabelle's just put into the chat. That's www.nuabeyondtheframe.com. And that's pretty much it. So with that, I'm going to bring things to a close. Thank you so much, Nick, for your time. I really enjoyed seeing you again, mate. So thank you for joining us. And other than that, thank you everyone for being involved as well. And we hope to see you again soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck.